You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
Hello mates, welcome back to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. I'm with Rick and Anna, which is great. They're great. Everyone's good. But more excitedly, or a variation of that word, you get it in context. We've got a very special guest with us who is, I would say one of the pioneers of the rebirth of adventure games, because he was there in the beginning, bringing AGS to the forefront. He's made some amazing games you've probably played, like Lamplight City, Shardlight. He's working on a game called Rosewater, and his name is Francisco Gonzalez. How are you, mate?
That was the most amazing introduction I think I've gotten in ever. Thank you. Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Are you normally greeted with hostility?
Well, no, but like pioneers of the rebirth of I was about to say that guy sounds really cool, and then I realized you were talking about me. I'm like, what? No, what?
It's so true, though.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind. But yeah, it's great to be here. Hello.
We've wanted to have you on the show for a while because I'm a genuine, actual fan. This interview required no homework on my behalf. Which is lovely.
Oh,
just such a
good, because I hate
treat,
those fake fans. No, I'm kidding.
I'll be showing myself out.
No, no, Rick, you were very kind when I met you in Seattle at that party.
Yes,
you were like, "Oh my God, you're the guy." And I was like, "Oh my God, he knows who I am." It was great.
I figured you just considered I was some weirdo at a strange party, but I mean that was a very genuine reaction because I
knew exactly who you were. I'm being sincere. I actually did know who you were because I think we were friends on Facebook already. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, there I'm putting the face to the name. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty surreal weekend all in. It was nice to get a chance to meet you through Julia Minamata and pick you up and hang around for a little while before we all jumped into the action and got to check out games. And of course, you're still working on games all the time on, I think you're on Twitch and stuff too, working on Rosewater and showing people what you're doing. So you're pretty busy out there.
Yeah. I sometimes I feel like I haven't done anything because, with everything that's been going on, it's like, even if you work all day, sometimes it's just like, I haven't done anything, but I don't want to drag this down. Yeah.
That's what working for yourself feels like. The more you like run ahead and you're like, I'm really going to push forward, and you push forward, and it's hard and it's long, and then you're like, I haven't gotten anywhere near enough done. Damn it, why aren't I working hard enough?
Yeah. I mean, I'd been working from home since before the pandemic, so that didn't really change. It's just, and also, like, I'm really happy that I have a home office now that I can, like, close the door on and go upstairs and not just be working at the same computer that's, like, 2 steps away from my bed like I used to do at my old studio apartment. Because if I had been in that situation during all of this, I think I would have probably not been well. But even still, like, just the fact that it's pretty much just get up, work, don't really do much else. It's been tough, but again, not to bring this down. Let's think positively. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
And I can relate too, mate, because the work at home thing was existing. It's the difference is now it's almost like it's like doing the same thing but looking out a window sadly while rain falls upon it. There's just a mood about it. But I'm glad to hear you got your own space to work, because that is important. I've also found it to be, it's very depressing / demotivating to do work in sight of your bed.
Yes.
I've been there. Yes. Yeah.
Although that being said, there are no windows because I am actually in a basement, but it's got a cool, like, I decorated it like cool, I decorated it like a cool pirate cove thing. So nice. At least it's atmospheric.
I like the pirate motif. Yeah.
Well, all right. So people. I've got questions. People want to hear answers and such. It's a matter of like there's too much on the menu. I kind of don't really know where to start. So I guess I guess I'll let you go all the way back to maybe let us know what got you into making adventure games. The bloody origin story. What was the first game you played? All that stuff.
Ooh. The first game I ever played, or the first adventure game I ever played?
Or at least what got you into, like, what really made you realize that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I kind of want to know the first game you ever played too first, and then you can say the other stuff.
I think the first game I ever played. So I had an Atari 2600 when I was a very, very young kid, and I remember playing Pitfall on that, and another one called Omega Race, which was just like a bunch of little shapes going around a rectangle.
Not if you look at the front of the box.
Yeah, definitely.
That describes a lot of games from that era.
Yeah. It reminds me of that ad in Vice City where it's like, here's, exciting game name where the red square fights the blue circle or whatever. And it's like, the red circle goes into it's all red circles and blue dots. But so that was the first video games I think I played. Unfortunately, we didn't have the 2600 very long because it was stolen during a burglary. So then I kind of moved. Whatever, it's fine. That was like 30-something years ago.
You're over it now.
But I'm
last year, he got over it. Yeah.
Yeah. But so like when I was a kid, I remember I got a Sega Master System, and then I got an NES. And I had the Sega Master System at my grandmother's house, and I had the NES at home. So I mostly played the NES. And then when I was in about, I want to say, 2nd or 3rd grade, I got a PC, and then I sort of, would play both NES, console and computer games. Remember when they were called computer games? But yeah, I had a cousin who like gave us a secondhand PC and a bunch of like shareware floppies and stuff. And I remember playing with stuff like Commander Keen, and the first adventure game I probably played was Hugo's House of Horrors.
Nice.
And
classic.
Yeah, and the first Sierra game I ever played was King's Quest V on the NES.
Wow.
Some interesting colors going there.
Yeah. It didn't have voice acting though, so that was a plus.
Yeah.
And like I had already played Hugo, and I really liked just the whole vibe of like walking around and typing commands and stuff. But I think it was King's Quest V that made me think, oh, this is really cool. I want to do something like this. So it was actually King's Quest V on the NES of all things that sort of, it was the bug that bit me that made me want to make my own game.
I'm so glad it existed for a reason now. That makes me happy.
I'm looking right now at my original NES, which is right over there under my TV.
Baby.
And my girlfriend actually had a copy of King's Quest V on the NES, so it's there in the pile.
Nice. Meant to be.
So yeah, I guess it was. Oh God.
2 parts to a whole.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking, I've got the NES, you've got the cartridge. Let's do this. Let's play King's Quest V. How horrible. So that's kind of what got me started on. I was probably about like, I don't know, 8 or 9 maybe at this point. So obviously I wasn't able to actually like act on the desire to do this for a while. I remember there was like there was a bookstore at the mall that had like, they had a bunch of shareware floppies available to buy, and I remember buying one that was called like Game Maker or something really generic. And I was like, I'll play around with this. And it was just really clunky and hard to figure out, and I made no progress whatsoever. So when I was in high school, when I was in about it doesn't matter. I was in high school and I was gifted a copy of Click and Play by a friend who had it, and who didn't make much headway in it because I told him that I wanted to make games. And so I had this copy of Click and Play, and I was already on the internet at that time because I remember going on America Online, and there was like some place that you could go to download games, and there was people who had uploaded their Click and Play games, and some people had actually made adventure games, quote unquote, point and click adventure games in Click and Play, which was not an engine that was really made for that, but you sort of could. So I used Click and Play, and I committed the sin of every budding adventure game designer, and I made a Monkey Island fan game called Monkey Island 2.5. And it was literally just, I ripped the sprites from Monkey Island 2 of Guybrush, and it was like move with the arrow keys left and right. It wasn't even point and click. And I just like ripped the backgrounds and the sprites, and it was literally just Guybrush standing outside like the end screen of Monkey Island 2 at the Big Whoop Carnival. You walk inside a room, and then there's like an off-screen thing where he's like, "Oh boy, a bumper car! Ouch! Someone pierced my ear! Oh boy, I'm getting taller!" And then he transforms into the Guybrush from Curse. And it was like, yeah, I've never told anybody this before.
I love it.
I'm so embarrassed now.
Is it possible to track down a copy of this?
You know, it might be, but good luck getting it to run on anything, because Click and Play, I think, only runs on like Windows 3.1. Maybe. I'm sure there's an emulator for it out there.
An early Flash player? It almost sounds like you're describing like the first Flash player.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So I messed around in Click and Play for a while, and I made a bunch of like little arcadey games and a couple of more like trying to be ambitious adventure game things. But then there was I found that there was a project that was called Scram, SCRAMM, which was being developed by some people on the internet, and it was supposed to be like the Scum engine, but better. Actually, I think one of the people that was involved with that was Andrew Langley, who went by Tellarium, who I think went on to work. Well, I don't think I know. He went on to work for like Telltale eventually, so he went somewhere. But cool. Scram, unfortunately, never did. It kind of was vaporware. But I actually, through like the forums, I met a few people who I would then find again when I discovered Adventure Game Studio. And I discovered Adventure Game Studio because I was in college and I was bored, and I Googled Adventure Game Maker, and I found Adventure Game Studio, and I found...
Just like that.
Yeah, it was really easy. It was Google. It's funny because I remember when I was in high school, my 12th grade history teacher was like, "Hey, everybody, if you want to do research, there's this great new search engine. It's called Google." And everyone was like, "Google, what a name. We're using Alta Vista, thank you very much." This was also another... This is just... I'm just deviating into, hey, look how old I am territory. This was also the same year where, like... So I grew up in Florida, and they used to do this thing for graduating seniors called Grad Night, where you could go to Disney World for the night.
Wow.
You just had like free run of the park from like 8 p.m. till 1 a.m.
How cool.
And
Nice.
the year, yeah, the like big thing was that they had like a performer or two performers. And the year I graduated, it was Destiny's Child and Jessica Simpson. And,
yeah.
Yeah, but it was May of 2000, so everyone was like, "Who are Destiny's Child and Jessica Simpson?"
Oh no, I'm a little late.
So yeah. But anyway, back to the origin story. So yeah, so I Googled that Adventure Game Maker. I found Adventure Game Studio. I either played...
You're like, this isn't what I Googled? It says
I don't
studio.
think...
God damn it.
Yeah, I don't think Google was even a verb at that time. It was just whatever.
I remember the first time I
asked
saw
Jeeves.
Google, I was like, hey, they spelled that wrong.
Yeah.
I actually surprisingly knew what a Google was, like, very early in life.
Well, that's good.
Sorry, that sounded like bragging, and it totally wasn't. Anyways, sorry, go ahead.
Nerd brag.
You should. If you knew what a Google was, you were way smarter than I was. So I played a game. I don't remember which I played first. It was a Ben Croshaw game for sure. It was either the first Reality on the Norm game or it was the first Rob Blanc game.
Mm-hmm.
And I played those, and I was like, oh, these are actually finished. You can finish a game in this engine. I'm going to try making a game. So I made a couple of games in the Reality on the Norm series. And then I decided I wanted to make a game about a kid or a guy who, like, it goes searching the world for the AGS source code. Because the forums back in those days, it was a very tight-knit little community, and so it was going to be a joke game where, like, he visited all the forum members and whatever, and it was going to be this globe-trotting adventure a la Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, because once again I had lofty goals. That never went anywhere, but then I decided to make a bunch of games about a guy who goes around the world investigating paranormal phenomena, so I made the Ben Jordan Paranormal Investigator series.
Yeah, a lot of people know about that one. That was kind of your initial, oh yeah, this guy, he made that.
Yeah, that was weird, because it was like I made the first game in 2 weeks, and I actually stuck with the project, and 10 years later, I had made 8 games, 10 games if you count the remakes, and, it was, yeah. So yeah, that was the origin story, I guess.
That was, yeah, I totally blew it. I had a jokey reference for the intro where it was going to be like, maker of Shardlight and Lamplight City and the chef and Lost Treasures of Ron.
Oh my god, you weren't kidding when you said you were a fan.
You know the secret words.
Oh my god, I forgot about the chef. I wish I could get the chef running, because I was really proud of that game. It was so stupid. The scene
you gotta
where
fill us in on this one.
Oh my god, okay, so the Reality on the Norm series, for anybody who doesn't know, was a sort of community project. It was kind of like the League of Gentlemen meets I don't know, some other, like, not Twin Peaks is cliche, but basically it was a game series where everybody was welcome to make a game, and all of the assets were crowdsourced, and the art style was really simple, so it wasn't, even if you didn't really have any art skills, you could emulate the style pretty easily. So you could draw your own backgrounds, you could make your own characters, and add to the resources, because, you could use other people's sprites. If you used the character, you could use their other characters. So it was this cool little thing where, a bunch of people, a lot of people got their start there. I mean, I got my start there. Dave Gilbert got his start there. And so, like, it was these, for a while there was, sometimes people would make games that were like crossovers and stuff like that. So yeah, I made a couple of games. I made 3, actually. I made 2 about this pirate called Hooky McPegleg, who which I totally stole the joke from Conan O'Brien, who had a character on his show called Kilty McBagpipes. But yeah, I made Hooky McPegleg, and his first game was pretty boring. It was just, he comes to Reality on the Norm and he tries to find the treasure. But then the second one I made was Hooky McPegleg Pirate Postman, where he becomes the postman. But the twist is he can't read, so he has to learn how to read in order to deliver the mail.
I'm into it, yeah.
Yeah. And I was very ambitious in that I made the game and then I added voice acting to it, and I got Yahtzee to play one of the characters, which was like I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then I made the chef, which was about an Italian chef named Luca and his nudist brother Guido, who has a restaurant. And there's a conspiracy afoot, and his restaurant gets shut down, and he has to rescue his brother. Yeah, it was great, and it was so stupid. And there's a scene at the end where Guido's tied up, and he you have to use a fork on the ropes, and he twirls it around like spaghetti. And then the whole thing at the very end, he's like, because he's always saying, "Oh, Guido, put some clothes on, nobody." And Guido's like, "Stop infringing on my lifestyle choices." And then at the very end, he's like, "You know what, Guido? I think you're onto something. I'm going to be known as the Naked Chef," and it was all for a pun. And then I actually did a nice little animation of him like taking off his clothes.
Speaking of animation,
oh God, how silly!
That's great.
Yeah, completely censored. Which, by the way, obviously I didn't want to like freak people out, so I put like a black censor bar over everything. Someone made a game down the line called, I forget what it was called, but it was a game about like one of the characters has like nude pictures leaked of them or something, and I forget what the plot was. But basically, they used Guido, and like he's standing behind a table, and at one point he walks out, and they did not leave anything to the imagination.
Oh.
There was a very very how do I put this? Animated animation of him, and it was funny, but at the same time it was kind of like, I don't know, seeing your child and realizing that your child's I don't know. So yeah.
Oh man. Golden Wake was your first real pro game that you made. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
First of all, was there anything between Ben Jordan and Golden Wake?
Yes. Yeah. So I did a game called Backdoor Man for the TIG Source Adult / Edutainment competition. Although technically that came out in 2009, so it was still while I was working on Ben Jordan 8. So I did that as like a little jam game, which actually is technically a sequel to a Golden Wake. But yeah, not only in that the main character is like the grand nephew of the main character in a Golden Wake. It was sort of I did it, and then I was like, oh, I know I'm gonna make this game already. Let me just like put this in as a funny little thing. So yeah, but yeah, Golden Wake was my first commercial game that came out in 2014. So yeah, the last Ben Jordan game, I started working on it in 2008, and it didn't come out until 2012 because at that point I had gotten a day job, and so there were times where I wouldn't touch AGS for like 6 months at a time, so that's why it took so long. Which in hindsight also, like, I did the backgrounds, I drew them on paper and then scanned them and colored them for some reason because I thought I should be innovative and try a different art style with every game. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have done that because it took way too long and it didn't really look very good. And I don't know, but whatever. What's done is done.
Well, you've used so many different animation styles throughout your games, that's for sure. What ended up leading you towards things like rotoscoping?
I think it was mainly just because I was such a fan of like Gabriel Knight and like that era of Sierra games that had the motion capture and stuff. And because I couldn't really animate traditionally, I decided that I wanted to give it a shot. And at that point, like digital cameras were becoming a thing, and I just was like, oh, well, I have Photoshop, I have a camera, let me try taking a picture of myself and tracing over it and seeing if it looks good. So that's kind of where that went to.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And
yeah,
I haven't
cool.
looked back.
You still doing rotoscoping with Rosewater too, is that correct?
Yep. I've been trying to push myself. With Rosewater, I'm like doing full screen cinematic cutscene type animations. Like, they're not super long because I don't want to go crazy, but I'm doing a lot more like emphasis animations that way, which has been fun.
Well, before we get bloody too far away from Golden Wake, I love that game, so I can't let opportunity slip. So I'm kind of wondering the how did you go about like pitching that game? What were the steps that led you to be coming up? Damn it! I didn't word it as delicately as I planned to.
No. It's funny. There's a funny story in that. Yeah. So basically, I was in an interesting position because I was working on the Ben Jordan games, and I think one of the things that the Ben Jordan games, one of the most important things that the Ben Jordan games taught me was how to finish a project. And I, with every game, I tried pushing myself a little bit more, but I really wanted to get each game finished. And more than anything, I wanted to get the series finished, because from Case 3 onward, I had written everything down and I knew that there was an end point. It wasn't like I was just making them and thinking, oh, well, maybe someday I'll finish them or whatever. So in 2010, Dave Gilbert of Wadjet started publishing other people's games. And he was doing puzzle bots, and he told me that he would be happy to publish a game of mine. So basically I had this open invitation to get a game published. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I can make money off of this. I can do this I can try my hand at doing this. Mm-hmm. But I was still working on Ben Jordan 8. So I was like, well, I need to finish the Ben Jordan series first and then come up with something. Yeah, so I was working on that, but I got the idea for a Golden Wake in about 2009-ish, and I didn't actually start, like, putting it together. I remember I pitched it, quote-unquote, at Mittens, Mittens being the name of the yearly gathering of the AGS community, which that year was in Anaheim, California. And, we used to have, like a show and tell night to kind of, for everyone to show off what games they were working on. So I put together a little mini 2-screen demo of a Golden Wake, and I was like, look, this is what I'm working on. And before that, actually, because, that was in the summer, the first time I pitched it to Dave and his wife Janet at GDC 2012, I was like, so I want to make this game. It's about a real estate agent. And she was like, oh, we hate real estate agents. Does he die? And I was like, funny you should say that. Yes. Spoilers. So that was kind of funny. It was definitely a hard sell. I will say that. When you put it that way. But I think the whole saying, he goes and works for the mob is what got me in. So I mean, basically I got the idea for the game because, I grew up in Miami and I was always really interested by the history of it. And I thought it would make a good topic for an adventure game. It was certainly unique. And, I mean, we can, if you have any other questions about it, we can get more in depth there. But overall, it's a little rough around the edges. I'm aware of that. But, I'm glad I got to make it. And it was certainly... It may not have been the best choice for a first game. They talk about, the art picture and the money picture, and this was definitely the art game and not the money game. But,
right.
I'm happy that I was able to do it. So,
yeah. Yeah, no, it's awesome. I have a question regarding Golden Wake that, I disguised a question that makes it sound like I'm asking you how sales on mobile go and if it's worth it, but I think I was really just trying to hint at peer pressuring you into putting Golden Wake on mobile. So it's not really a question.
Totally work.
It's very long-winded and wordy, so I'm just going to spare everyone. All right.
Did Golden Wake perform well, at least eventually, or anything? Because I for one, I only played it for the first time, I guess, a few years ago. Because I'm pretty late to the game when it comes to the whole revival of classic style point and click adventure games. Yeah. But I instantly just clicked with it and I loved it. I thought it was really refreshing because it was just such a unique take and all that. But I also admit it's not exactly the sort of thing that really sells to the mass market.
Yeah.
So how did that do for you? In
first of all, thank you. I'm glad you liked it. That really does mean a lot because. Yeah, it is a very personal game and a very personal project, and I realize it doesn't have necessarily a wide commercial appeal. So anytime anyone says that they liked it, it's it's real nice. As far as how it did commercially, it did okay. It wasn't a hit at all, but it wasn't a flop.
Okay.
I mean, I think the best thing that it did was get my foot in the door, and it led me to then be able to make another game, and that was Shardlight, and I wouldn't have been able to continue necessarily making games full time on a Golden Wake's earnings.
Right.
But, the fact that Dave hired me on salary to make Shardlight was the reason I was able to do that. Because, usually, obviously every developer is different, but my general trajectory has been, make the game, live off of the royalties of that game while making the next game. Because, it's hard to get funding for games, especially, adventure games from publishers and stuff. So, and generally I like to, keep the costs as low as possible so that I'm not so I can keep doing this. So yeah, and with that case, I wouldn't have necessarily, but it's still doing well. It still sells. It's, especially when I discount it, it still does. It's not a great amount, but it's still, a nice little surprise at the end of the month.
Yeah. It's getting out there at least.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's the important thing, really.
Mm-hmm.
Probably sell really well on mobile, too.
So speaking of Golden Wake, you quite recently released an update for the game.
Yes. Actually, I did.
See, your work is never done.
No, it's never done. Yeah, so actually, funny story. I had, I think the thing that people were most upset about, rightly so, was the air show puzzle. Because I was not a great coder at the time, and I had coded it so that, the timer was kind of unfair, and if you took too long, the UI would become unresponsive, and I think a lot of people got frustrated with that because it wouldn't respond to... It was, people don't like timers in adventure games, and rightly so. They're not good. So my main thing was that I wanted to fix that up and, tweak the code so that it was a lot more fair and balanced to play. And I also did a couple of little touch-ups because there were some of the character portraits that I didn't like, and I thought I had gotten better at drawing them, so I touched up some of the more hideous ones, and I did a couple of tiny little background tweaks here and there.
Nice.
But I actually did that a few years ago, and I had been nagging Dave to update the game, but he's got plenty of other things to be concerned about, so he hadn't gotten around to doing it. But recently, he was kind enough to transfer the ownership of it to me, so now I have full access to it. So I was like, all right, it's time for an update. So I updated it, which reminds me I have to do it on GOG now too. So thanks for reminding me, because I've been putting that off. But yeah, I think it's one of the luxuries of having a digital game is being able to patch it whenever you want. So I figured it was time to do that.
Back in the day, you get Quest for Glory 4, say, and you're like, oh man, I just can't play it right now.
They just drop this in the mail for a replacement and wait, 3 months.
Exactly, you'll get your new discs.
Actually, when I bought the Quest for Glory anthology and 4 wouldn't work, it was just like, well, I guess I could never play this game ever again. And then I just didn't for until a few years ago.
All right, I've got one more Golden Wake question. I know this is crossing the territory into disproportionate amount of questions on only one of your games. I'm sorry, just one more.
Fine.
I'm a big fan of the Sierra game Gold Rush, and I'm just wondering if it's my nostalgia or if you happen to have played and liked that game, and if there's a little influence there because of the historical tie-ins, and I don't know, there's something about it, maybe even just the palettes of the game, the presentation is very breezy and light and lovely.
Well, thank you. I have played Gold Rush. I don't think it was I think I played it after I made a Golden Wake, so I'm going to have to disappoint you there. But it was an influence on Rosewater, so
Nice.
That.
But if it makes you feel any better, I did like a Golden Wake much better than I liked Gold Rush. Just so
that's
know.
great. Yeah, I tried not to do the whole random death from dysentery thing.
Although you're definitely not scared of using deaths in your games either.
No, but I try and make them as fair as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad. I speak for all of us when I say we're big proponents of doing it, but doing it fairly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although I did get gunned down a real large number of times in Golden Wake.
With the shotgun granny?
Yes.
Yeah, that's totally a trope of mine, I've realized. I have this tendency to put shotgun grannies in my game. And I had to disappoint Ben Chandler because he's the one that pointed this out to me. He's like, now you're making a game where you'd have the perfect opportunity to put one in. And I'm like, I'm not putting one in. He's like, why not? So I'm sorry, but there's no shotgun grannies in Rosewater.
Yeah, that makes me want to start a petition, actually, and I'm suddenly angry.
I like the way that you give the player a chance to experience your games. Like, take it in Lamplight City. You're like, you know what? You can just play it through. That's okay. You didn't get something? Just keep going. You totally didn't get something? Well, you know what? We got something for you, too. I mean, that really adds to the replayability of your games. I just love that touch.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, design-wise, it's a little ambitious. But I mean, I like putting in little extra things here and there. Clearly. It's certainly easy to make achievements that way, because if you put something in, you can always make an achievement for those people who are so inclined to make sure that they see stuff that they may not have otherwise seen if they see that there's like, what's this,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Actually, funny you mentioned that, because Paul and I were talking recently about achievements in adventure games and wondering if they were worth implementing. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I personally love achievements and trophies. That's just the kind of gamer I am. And I will 100% and platinum as much as possible, even if it's ridiculous. And honestly, like, part of me just loves coming up with the stupid names for them. So yeah, like, I think achievements in adventure games, I personally prefer it if it's stuff like that you have to go out of your way to do. Like, the remaster of Day of the Tentacle was really interesting because it had some achievements that were just like, use the correction fluid on, like, the hamster or something. And I was like, ooh, I wonder if there's a funny message that I've never heard before. But there wasn't. It was just kind of like, in some cases there were.
Roller coaster.
Yeah, but in other cases it was just like, oh, okay, well, all right. But yeah, like, I like making achievements for things that you wouldn't necessarily try, or like if there's alternate solutions to something, like give an achievement for maybe one of the lesser known ones or something. I don't like achievements that are like, you finished chapter 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, as a designer, those are kind of cool, like I indulged myself by having like, you finished the game, because then that way you can track the stats and see the global stats and see how many people actually finished your game. But yeah, to like chapter by chapter ones, I think that's just filler and kind of dumb, but whatever.
That's really cool. I wouldn't have thought of implementing it that way, in the sense of like, you just have like a joke you're just really proud of, that you feel like they're probably, most players aren't going to just find, because it's a click on everything kind of player only that's going to find it, so you can like you said with Day of the Tentacle, but make sure something's there.
Right. And then if you have people who are like me and who are completionists and want to get every single one, then those people will be more or less guaranteed to go and find everything.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. Is that something that you did when you were playing games back in the day that had point systems, like a Sierra game? Did you always want to go back and find things, or did you just go back with a walkthrough?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I did. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I have like the King's Quest Companion and the Space Quest Companion that have the points lists. So whenever I would like go through and replay the old games, I would like make sure to go through and get all the points. Yeah.
Yeah.
You never got anything for it. I think the only Sierra game that actually tells you something is like Quest for Glory 4.
Well, I think theoretically they all do, but I think some of them are bugged out so you can't actually achieve them.
Yeah. Like 4 is like, oh, you got a full score. You're a true hero or something like that. It's like, okay, great. But,
4 let you cheat though, because it let you take your character at the end of the game and then reuse him as an extra strong, super strong. Because if he was already an import character and then you finish 4 and then you played 4 again with your same character, you'd have this like super beefy boss, and it's like everything was one hit kill. I used to love that. I never
did that though, because every time I would finish, I was like, I'm not gonna play through this game again.
I'm done with this now.
I just finished it. I'm not gonna wait till I do my. I used to do like an entire Quest for Glory series playthrough every few years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite thing to do, actually, the one that I did one that was like the tragedy of the wizard, because I think I named him Harry Potter or something. So I had the magic user, and then at the very end of 5, I used the thermonuclear blast spell, which crashes the game. And that was my canonical ending as far as I was concerned. And I actually haven't gone back and played Quest for Glory since then.
Kind of hard to top that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, we ran well over the amount of time that we normally allot to each episode, but that's because we ended up talking long enough to fill up 2 episodes worth of time. And so we will continue with the second half of our conversation with Francisco Gonzalez next week, where we will talk more about his upcoming game Rosewater, which we encourage you to take this opportunity to wishlist on Steam. So, in the meantime, feel free to join in on the conversation by finding us on Facebook. Look up the Classic Gamers Guild. We have a page and a group. We are also on Twitter at the CG Guild and Instagram at CGG Podcast. You can also write to us by email at mail@classicgamersguild.com. Speaking of which, we will be doing an episode very soon to go over the questions that you have been asking us, and we apologize for the delay in replying to these, some of which are weeks old by now. If you'd like to support the show, we are on Patreon. We do sincerely thank all of our Patreon supporters for helping us with our hosting bills so we can keep the show going. And an extra special thanks goes out to Jay Holmes and Mark Fillion, the 2 contributors to our extra special thanks Patreon tier. Please make sure to check out Mark's upcoming game, The Chinatown Detective Agency, and wishlist it on Steam. But thank you both for being big supporters of our show. We really couldn't do this without you, and I mean that literally, so I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, guys. For the rest of you, for those of you listening right now, don't forget to subscribe to our show on whichever platform you use to listen to us to make sure you catch the rest of our interview with Francisco. But until then, as Paul would say, don't do a murder.